So guys, FPL is live. Finally, it has been a long day for us FPL fanatics, sitting around, refreshing constantly, and finally now we can make our teams. Uh, I got a team ID of 3974, which is the best ever I have managed. So very happy with that as well. I mean, it's not an achievement, but it just feels nice. Before that, I have never got a team ID that is less than 6 digits. This time it's 4 digits, which is, it feels good. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to do a shout out to live FPL.net and FPL.Team, two websites for letting us prepare our drafts beforehand. uh, I'll put the links down below. We can of course use those websites throughout the season to enhance our FPL experience. Very useful. I'm very sure anyone who plays FPL seriously are aware of them, and yeah, if you're not, do check them out. Okay, so I made my first draft and I wanted to share it with you all. This is just reactionary to the information that we have so far, but still a month to go, and we will know so much more about formations and positioning, budget players. So many transfers have to happen as well, right? So, guys, I'm constantly trying to upgrade my content. I tried OBS for the very first time in the last video, and this time I did a little more the graphics. So, my team is very adaptable. Uh, we do not need a football ground, we play anywhere we find space. And as you can see, I have decided we are going to spend our preseason on the Wimbledon center court, because why not? Uh, this is something different that I wanted to do, and yeah, this is just an experiment that I thought I should do, and here we are. Okay, so let's start with the team. This is a very popular question on Twitter. Uh, who will be the first name on our teams? Always a very interesting question to ask. Generally, it is Mo Salah or Alexander Arnold or one of the big hitters. A newcomer to the league, like somebody like Erling Haaland, and maybe Kane, Son, players like that. So let's see who I have gone with. So the first name in my team is actually Taiwo Awoniyi of Nottingham Forest. I'm a writer and I love stories, and there is a small one here. During the 2018 World Cup, I really loved the Nigeria jersey, the white and green one. It had a very unique design, and I bought it. I wanted to put a name and number on the back, but as a Liverpool fan, I could not find anyone. They were the likes of Victor Moses and from other clubs, players like Iheanacho and even someone like Iwobi, Ahmed Musa, players like that. But I could not find a player who had immediate Liverpool connection. And then suddenly, one day I heard of this young, very tall centre forward named Taiwo Awoniyi, who joined us as a 16-year-old, but he never could get a work permit to play in the Premier League. He kept on going out on loan, and finally, when he did get his work permit last season, we sold him to Union Berlin, and he did really well there. He scored 15 goals, was the 6th highest scorer in Bundesliga last season, and that is why Nottingham paid, I think 17 million pounds. He's their record signing, and I'm so glad to see him back in the Premier League. This is a big opportunity for him, and honestly, I have not seen him play other than some YouTube videos, but from what I've read, for a big guy, he has really good feet. His passing is good. He can score all types of goals, not just headers. He's good at both his feet. So I'm really looking forward to his partnership with Brendan Johnson. The big guy small guy partnership up front is always exciting to see. And to me it somehow feels like the partnership of Robin Hood and Little John. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Robin Hood. A lovely story, and I just had to have him in my team. Okay, so Avon is my first pick in this year's FPL. Let's move to his striking partner right now, and my second forward is his Bundesliga mate Erling Haaland. Template pick. Honestly, I'm not 100% certain on him. I wanted Kevin De Bruyne, but Haaland being cheaper made the decision for itself. It is good for flexibility, as I can just move to another forward who's doing well in case Haaland doesn't work. And I mean that just takes me one move, right? So it's always good to have a premium striker. And here it is a decision I made with my head rather than being a call from the heart. So yeah, Haaland is going to be my second striker. Now let's look at the midfield. First name, Mo Salah. Absolutely no doubt about that. 3 golden boots in 5 years. A fit and Richard Salah, having signed a new contract. A lot of people said that his form has dipped towards the end of last season, but that is human. The amount of football he played was insane. I think he played for 120 minutes in a row in the African heat during the African Cup of Nations, and he came back and he played in the very next game for us against Leicester. So it was not surprising to see him, having a bit of spell where goals were not really coming for him. He looked exhausted more than anything, and I think he's recharged. He's fit now. He had an injury towards the end of last season as well, and he has signed a new contract. So all the luck if you want to go without him. I have tried that before, and I'm not doing that again. So one thing I wanted to address here is that Liverpool's front three is not as locked as we think. Everyone thinks that Diaz, Salah, and the new signing, Liverpool's record signing, Darwin Núñez, this is going to be our first choice front three. I'm not 100% sure about that. So Diaz and Salah, they are going to be the first choices in their positions, but the number 9 position could be up for grabs, and it could be Diogo Jota starting the season as number 9. That is very much possible. Klopp does take time to bed in new players, but sometimes if the player is doing really well in training and stuff like that, he could just come in straight into the team as well, which we have seen with players like Van Dijk and even Diaz. He just came in and he took his spot from day one. So I think it depends a lot on how well Núñez does during preseason. But if we see Núñez starting the season as the number 9, then I won't be surprised to see Jota and Diaz rotating on the left wing, and Bobby Firmino being the backup to Núñez. But if Jota is playing number 9, I think then Diaz becomes a lot more nailed option, because I'm not expecting Núñez to play on the left. He's at a very good price. Diaz is just 8. I was expecting him to be at least 8.5. But yeah, he's a very popular pick right now. But just be cautious if you want him to cover Salah. If you're going with a no Salah draft, and if you think that maybe Alexander-Arnold, Trent, and Robertson, Alexander-Arnold, and Luis Diaz can cover for Salah, just be cautious with that. Next up, Pedro Neto, a player I really like. 5.5 is just cheap. He is a quality player. Wolves do have options. Podence, Traore is back. There's Wang, but Neto is on another level. Whenever he plays, you can just see that spark in him. Good finisher. He takes set pieces as well. He's got pace. He can play on both sides. He can play on left and right, and if required, he can play in a 2. He can play through the middle as well. But he was injured a lot last season, and that is why probably his minutes were managed even after he returned from the injury. So perhaps that is why he costs so less right now, but for that price, I think he's probably the best option in that price bracket of somewhere around 5.5. Some other options that you have, uh, maybe Visa from Brentford. I like him. Maybe someone like Donny van de Beek. But Man United is a mess right now, and you just have to see how the preseason goes. But other than that, there are not too many options in that price bracket, and Neto looks like a standout. So I'm just going with him for now. And finally, my third midfielder, I'm going with a Threemium in a 5-3-2 formation, is going to be Son Heung-min. Some people thought he is overpriced. He just won the Golden Boot without being on penalties. Son was on fire last season, especially in the second half of the season. And after Salah, I think he is still very much the next most important pick in the game. I'm seeing people sacrificing him to fund their big at the back strategy. But guys, I like going with this setup. I do not have mid-priced mids like Madison, Mount, Saka, Diaz, Bowen, Coutinho. I really like those players. I really want to have those players. But if I go with Threemium, I'm just not covering the premium slots. I'm also covering every other player below that price as well. Son for me is covering De Bruyne or Bruno Fernandes or somebody like Raheem Sterling, and as well as he's covering every other player who's in that 8.5, 7.5 bracket as well. The players that I've just mentioned. It takes me one move. To just move from, if the Threemium doesn't work, just takes me one move to move from an expensive player to a cheaper player, and I have extra money to spend elsewhere as well. Maybe I can go and upgrade one of my defenders, or I can upgrade players like Neto or Avoni. It becomes really easy for me. On the flip side, if you spread out your fund and suddenly Threemium becomes essential, you have to make mass changes, or you'd probably have to sell some other premium. Maybe someone was just blanked, maybe Salah is just blanked, and you think that, and Son has probably scored a brace, and you suddenly think that moving from Salah to Son looks like a very essential move this week. And then what happens is you bring Son in, and the next week Salah goes crazy. That is a very common thing, and to cover that, I generally like going with this strategy. I go with this every year and post every wildcard. Last year was an exception. Last year we had to spread our funds because of the cancellations due to COVID. We needed a squad. This year, with 5 substitutions and so early in the season when even Champions League is not a factor, I don't think you really need to spread out your funds, and you just need to have the players that you think are going to do really, really well and who are playing in your first 11. So I'm sticking with this strategy, and this is something I'm expecting not to change even in a month when the game week 1 deadline passes. Okay, so let's now move into the defense. The defense is very interesting this year. A lot of people are absolutely buzzing about going 5 at the back. People are going not just big at the back, people are going huge and massive at the back. So I'm not going massive, I'm going decently big. My aim was to cover all the premium defenses, and the first player has to be Trent Alexander-Arnold. I said before, I'm going to have Trent at 10. I'm a Liverpool fan and I cannot watch a Liverpool game without Trent in my team. And I think he'll be there in most of the teams. 7.5, everyone expecting him to go up. We even expected prices like 8.5. So this looks like a bargain. Robertson is a very good pick as well. But I think right now, when you're building your first draft, it is important to cover all the defenses rather than doubling up on someone, because most of the big teams do have good fixtures, and I'd rather have Joao Cancelo rather than Robertson, at least for the time being. You can see I have actually kept a slot open for both Liverpool and Man City, because we do not know right now which players are going to click, which we may know after a week or maybe 2 weeks, and then we can make our move. So I've gone with Cancelo again. Very happy to have him. He's 7. He's expensive, but I actually had him quite late last season. I tried to cover that City defense slot with Aymeric Laporte, and that worked decently well for me. But when I had Cancelo, I think I felt like I bought him for 7, and it did not feel like that I paid more than I should have for him. He looked like a 7 million player, and there was no doubt in my mind that he's a priority. Very, very attacking player. He's barely a defender. He's a goal threat. He gets into the box repeatedly throughout the match. I think he gets more involved than De Bruyne in that attack. So Cancelo is a must, in my opinion. And the only thing that could make this interesting is if Cucurella comes in. City are actually about to sign Cucurella, I think. Is very strongly linked with them. Price looks like an issue, but City have money, and I think if Guardiola really wants Cucurella, he's going to have him. So if Cucurella comes in, he's going to be 5, and then it becomes really interesting, because a lot of people think that it's going to be between Walker and Cucurella, and Cancelo is just going to play either right back or left back. It doesn't really matter. But we know that Walker is a better defender, and in some games, against teams which have good wingers, we might actually see Guardiola going with Walker and Cucurella both, and Cancelo might sit out in a few as well. So we have to see how things go. But early in the season, with the kind of fixtures that City have, you just don't want to watch a City game without Cancelo in your team. Okay, so next up is Tomiyasu. Arsenal do not actually have as good a fixtures as we think, especially in terms of defense. Crystal Palace away is not easy. Last year, in the very first game, they went to Brentford and they lost. I think their younger players have an extra year of experience, but still this is a new team. A lot of players who are still very young. They've brought in a lot of young players, and Crystal Palace is probably going to be harder than Brentford. And even after that, the fixtures that I'm seeing, they've got Leicester, they've got the likes of Aston Villa after that. So those are not easy games. So he's a cheap way through to a premium defense. Arsenal have actually improved defensively in the last 2 years under Arteta, but it's a very streaky defense as well. When they start keeping clean sheets, they keep clean sheets one after one after one. But if they don't, it just looks really clumsy at the back at times. And so I'm not so sure about him. At the moment, I have him mostly because the Arsenal Crystal Palace game is the first game of the season, and when I'm watching it, I really want to have a player representing my team in that game. So that is why Tomiyasu is in there. But he could easily become a Brighton or maybe a Brentford defender, maybe a Leicester defender as well, or maybe just a wild pick that I really like. Okay, so let's see. Next up, we've got Matty Cash. He's a player who tempted me throughout last season, but I never had him. He had an injury-prone begin to his Premier League career, but last season he started all the 38 games. He's an excellent player. Has a tendency of showing up at the far post. Luka Dean is somebody who stays wide, crosses a lot, and Cash is somebody who is a strong defender. I think he tackles really well, and at the same time, he's always good for interceptions and things like that. But he puts in shots. He shows up at the far post and tries to slot in. This is something that modern day fullbacks do regularly, and he's a goal threat. And now Villa do actually have some really good fixtures, and I'm not going to have Coutinho. I really wanted to have Coutinho. I wanted to have Watkins. So I'm definitely going to have one Villa player starting in my uh, team. And so Matty Cash is one of the first names actually for me in defense. Probably, he's the third pick. After Trent and Cancelo, I think he's my third most priority in defense. And so he's going to be in for me. Finally, the last one, Perisic, Ivan Perisic, a veteran of the game. He would mostly play left wing back, top player, very attacking, good crosser, very good in the air as well. I don't know about minutes because he's 33, but until Champions League starts, I don't think minutes are going to be that big of a problem. So I'm willing to take that chance, and let's see. He does have competition from the likes of Sessegnon and Reguilon, but he's class apart. He's much better than those players, and at the moment it just looks like a no-brainer for me. And he's very highly owned already, which is quite clear indication that a lot of people see the potential in it. Okay, so the final player, the goalkeeper. The goalkeeper is Edouard Mendy. He's basically there to cover for the Chelsea defense. Now 5 million is a very good price for a Chelsea keeper. I would have loved to have Reece James or even Ben Chilwell, but I cannot fund them. The only way I can do that is actually by going with a 4.5 mid or forward, which I do not really mind. I mean a 4.5 mid or forward in my starting lineup, not in the subs. I played a lot of last season with 10 men. Because of cancellations and injuries and suspensions, I had players going to jail. I had, so it was, I had 2 keepers missing 1 week, and then, I had 7 players and both my keepers were playing in that. So those kind of things happened last year, and it made me realize that all the 11 players in our team are not that important. There will be some weeks, there won't be any weeks, in fact, where you're not going to have 1 or 2 pointers or even 0 pointers from players who are, in your starting 11. What is important is to have, my priority is to have as many players as possible that I really want. And Reece James is a player I do actually really want. So let's see how things go. I'm looking forward to having, I had players like Anthony Gordon and Jacob Ramsey for a good span last season. My first half of the season with 4.5 mids was absolute hell because I had Bissouma, and I don't want to go into details, but everyone knows what happened with him. And then I bought in Josh Brownhill, and Burnley stopped playing football, and then half my season went like that, and I really needed those 2 pointers in those weeks where they did not show up. And then I played my second wild card, and I bought in, I had both Anthony Gordon and Jacob Ramsey in my team, and both of them did really well for me. So I'm looking for a player like that, and if I find someone like that, I'm definitely going to bring them in, and that will help me to bring in Reece James, who I really want. Okay, so this is my team then. On the bench I have a few Man United legends, and I've got Dwight Gale. There are other 4.5 forward options as well, but Dwight Gale, I've gone with him because he is likely to leave, so there is no risk of price drops and things like that. And so it's okay. I'm not really bothered about the bench as much. Again, early in the season, I do not really have any player in the team who's a major rotation risk, so that is completely fine. And with the 5 subs rule, I think the good players are anyway going to come on. In most of the games, we're going to see, we like it or not, we're going to see 1 point cameos off the bench, and we are going to see 59-minute substitutions. Those are going to happen, and so suddenly your bench is not that important, especially with budget constraint early in the season. That's not that important. So one player that is in my bench actually is Andres Pereira. He has just signed for Fulham, and he could be our first playing 4.5 mid. So I'm keeping him, and we'll scout for most such options over the next 1 month. I actually do not change around a lot. I like collecting information and then making my call late on. So I'll not be doing a lot of drafts. This one was the first one, and that is always very exciting to do, isn't it? So it's been a long day. I do not want to make this video any longer. So I'll see you next time. And yeah.